What's up, everybody? Welcome to Apolo-neering. We have a special interview this week. It's special for many reasons, but the two are I have my lovely, beautiful wife over here, Brittany, and so we're actually going to be interviewing our guests together. One of the reasons that we're doing that is this week's topic is sensitive, but also I think our guest and my wife can relate to this, and so it should be a very good conversation to have. And hope that a lot of you can relate. And so I just want to remind everyone that this page is just a platform for people to share their testimony, for giving them an opportunity to share what Jesus has done in their life. And we know that this world is a dark place, that there's many lures that Satan likes to draw us into, many different beliefs, and he likes to confuse us. And so I just wanted to provide a platform for people to share the darkness, to share what's really going on out there, and share how Jesus saved them out of that. And we want to get that truth out there. We want to share our testimony and let people experience and hear what we've gone through. So that's really what this page is intended to be. And I hope that you guys are connecting to the videos and really enjoy what we're trying to do here. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guests. This is Kristen, and after spending a majority of her teen years and her early 20s running from God, Kristen has learned to follow Jesus as her Lord and Savior. Kristen was adopted at a young age and experienced the rejection that comes with not knowing who her parents were or why they didn't want her. Even though her adopted parents taught her about Jesus and took her to church, Kristen never completely committed her life to Jesus. She submitted to a feminist mentality and pursued a lavish life. She gave her life to Jesus just about a year ago at 23 and is currently working for a temp agency. She's going to school to pursue a degree that is math related. So Kristen, hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm so good. I'm so excited to be here and share my testimony and the ways that God has worked in my life for good.
Good. Yeah, we're so excited to talk to you. And I know my wife and I were chatting that we think this is going to be a good interview for a lot of reasons, because I think our society is really experiencing a lot of what you have to say, and part of your story I think a lot of people can relate to. So why don't we begin? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us the kind of lifestyle that you pursued. I forgot to introduce today's topic, and today's topic actually is exposing our society's sexual temptation. So we live in this very sexual culture. We live in a culture that there's half-dressed women everywhere. It's all about our looks. Yeah, it's very sexualized and just body image. It seems that our physical bodies have so much hold on who we are as humans, and I think our society wants us to find our identity in our physique and in our sexuality. So that's today's topic, and sorry I forgot to introduce that, but Kristen, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your story and start with where you feel fit.
So the short bio that you gave was pretty spot on. I was adopted when I was almost 5 years old. Even though I grew up in a very prayer-oriented, healing and deliverance, the Spirit definitely moving in the churches and the gatherings that we were at, and knowing what real worship really looks like and how it moves people. I was still in middle school and my teen years into high school, just easily sedated into all the lies of needing acceptance from my peers or from guys, and noticing my body and how I should dress, and that being sexy was nothing to be ashamed of, that it was powerful, and that I began to find my identity in how beautiful people thought I was, or how sexy that I thought I was, which is really kind of ridiculous whenever you think about it, because it's all subject to perspective, because sexy is different to every single person. So whenever you're finding your identity in that, it's like any other thing that you try to, it's so wavering. Like it's it's never going to be the same. But so yeah, that's the kind of the trap that I fell into. And I remember from a young age, I kind of hit on this when we first connected, that I always was like scared of the sexual desires that like the thoughts that I would have, or nobody really explained sex to me in a healthy way. All they would ever say is, you're not supposed to do it outside of marriage, and that's it. Like, so I think that had a big part to play in some of the shame that I felt. But at a very young age, I remember being ashamed and not understanding the sexual desires that I would have. And I believe I want to do some more research and pray about it. But I believe that those ties will go back to the family that I came from, and maybe like some generational curses and stuff like that, that was carried on with me. And the moment that I truly accepted Christ and decided that I was going to follow him was the moment that I was released from all of that, which is, I couldn't be happier. But so yeah, I got sucked into that in my teen years, and I decided to follow the world, and I pursued a career where I travel for a living. I did event work for Ford Motor Company, so I would travel the U.S. working events for them, and I started to find my identity and where I was and how many places I'd been to and how cool I could make my life look. And I was in a relationship that was really great, and that brought more confusion to me, because even though he was awesome and he loved me or worshiped me, as people would say, and he was faithful and awesome, I was still like, I felt like there was still something missing. And in my unknowingness, I thought it was because I loved him that I wasn't in love with him, which now so many things just seem goofy to me, like the way that that I thought, or like what made sense to me. But now I understand that it wasn't that. Like, I had a void that I was trying to fill with him, or with everything, and none of it was cutting it. None of it was getting the job done. And I tell people that rock bottom doesn't always look like what you think it might look like, because a year ago, my life didn't look like it was in shambles. It looked like I was in a good relationship. I was about to get married. I had my own things, my own car, my own place. Everything looked great, but I just wasn't happy, and I needed more, and I knew I needed more. So I broke up with my ex last year in May, and I started to pursue God and ask questions. And I had this new desire in my heart that I never had in my life. I really understood for not commitment, community. I was like, I need Christ following people in my life. Like, I need it. Where do I find people? Like, so I started church shopping, but prayerfully, because I was like, I don't want to be one of those people that is hopping from church to church and I'm just being a consumer and I'm just taking. No, I want to like be planted somewhere. Like, God, what is community? What does it look like? Why do you call for us to have it? I want that. And then that turned into, I want all the things that you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just feel like I'm just kind of keep going.
No, it's okay. So I have a question for you. You were adopted, right? And so from our conversations, you told me that you didn't really know who your biological family was until pretty recently, right?
Yeah, I was reconnected with my birth family last summer. So this summer will be 2 years.
Okay.
So it was 2 years ago. But
Yeah.
so when I say I was reconnected with my birth family, it was with all my aunts and all my siblings. So there's 7 of us, and I'm right in the middle. I have 3 older and 3 younger.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I live in Dallas, Texas, and they had all been living kind of in separate homes. We all had different dads. But it's so crazy that we had all been growing up in the same area and just never knew each other. But they kind of protected me for about 6 months. They were scared for me to meet my birth mother, because she's kind of the reason that everything happened. She was an addict. She wasn't able to take care of us. And so I knew them 6 months later on Christmas Day. I met my birth mother. And it was actually Christmas of last year. So I met her, and I was able to visit with her and my sister one more time a couple weeks after that. And then she passed away last February. She had HIV, and she got sick with pneumonia this time last year, and her body wasn't able to fight it. So it was really crazy. Like, I had just met all my siblings, and I ended up meeting my birth mother. We went through that together. It kind of really brought us all pretty close. And I'm coming up on my birth mother's death anniversary. So it's been a pretty crazy journey. Through it all, something that I've wanted to make sure is very prominent. My parents that adopted me were able to have 2 daughters after they adopted me 10 years later. My mom was told she was never going to be fertile or be able to have children, which is how our story was inspired. But then we call my little sisters miracle babies. And I just wanted to make sure that no matter what, they know that I'm their sister. Like, nothing's changing. Like, our dynamic's not changing. Like, we're a family through and through. Me meeting my birth family does not affect our relationship at all. That's something that's been very important for me to maintain with my younger sisters, because they're 10 and 13, and I know that's like a really big trying time in your life where they're really being shaped and they need their big sister. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to interject really quick, and when I was listening to you say how your sisters are miracle babies, I full like heartedly believe that, but I almost view it from a different aspect, that like God's plans don't look like man's sometimes, and man could see your mother as, oh, you're never going to be able to have children, but God saw it as, no, like your story needed to happen before your mother and father could have biological children. Like, you were so vital and so important to that story, that it wasn't like a detour, right? Like, it happened exactly the way it needed to happen. Like, you had to be adopted into this family because God saw it fit. And I just love, adoption is just so near and dear to my heart. And I love people who adopt and who are adopted, because I always think about the gospel and how, like, we're adopted. Like, we're not chosen. Well, we are, right? We're chosen now, but we're not like the chosen, and God went out and brought his son, and he died on the cross, and he adopted us, and that adoption is so beautiful, and I love it. I don't know if you know, like, the context in the Jewish like people, but when you were adopted, you got all of the rights that biological children did. Like, you weren't like considered different. You weren't like you weren't an added bonus. You were like, you have every inheritance that anybody else did. And so I just wanted to interject on that you know, that's the way your mom's story happened.
Yeah.
so beautiful. I love it so much.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking too. I was just like, man, this is like, you have like such a perfect opportunity to be an example for your little sisters, right? Because we're talking today about like the sexual influence of our culture, right? And the standard that's placed on women for some reason, like, you know, it's like almost these women got to have perfect bodies, you know, they got to have, you know, just the right amount of six pack, and they got to have the, you know, the right features and all this kind of stuff. But your beauty is not found in your features, right? Your beauty is found in who God created you to be, and your purpose there. And so you have that opportunity. But going back to that, the reason I asked you about your adopted parents was because, do you think that you not knowing who your father was played a role in, the lavish life that you live, the sexuality, the thoughts, the things that were going on in your life?
So I definitely think that there's something there. I haven't been able to pinpoint it because the most prominent chipping away of who I was came from the losing of my mother, because my dad was never in the picture. So when I was taken into foster homes and I would meet with my counselor, my mom would come and kind of visit. She would do a couple of visiting sessions, and I would be so excited. So she was always kind of like, oh, like I know who she is, and I would like to see her, but I just never, I feel like kind of there wasn't really a void that was created because it never existed. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what that meant, that he wasn't in my life. And then whenever my parents adopted me, all I knew is that I had this desire to have a dad, and it was very difficult, the dynamic that happened with my parents, because I was so accepting and so excited to have a father and a daddy, but my mom, it was so like, God bless them. She told me at my baptism in November that I taught them how to live like a prayerful life, because she did not know how else to get through, how difficult it is to try and raise a child that doesn't understand a mother and doesn't trust mothers. So yeah, it's pretty difficult, and I want to spend the rest of my life just appreciating and giving back to my mom, because she is so incredible to me, and I have so much more appreciation for her every day. It was actually her birthday on Friday, so.
So I know that I can relate in the sense that I come from a broken home. My mom was a single parent. My grandparents raised me. My mom was kind of in a lot of different relationships when I was growing up, and a reality that I've had going through my journey and really trying to like scrape the surface and see back why I made the decisions that I made. I've discovered that God has created this perfect unit, right? A mother and a father. And if you look at it, the first line of attack is going to be a marriage. That's like what the enemy wants to attack. The enemy wants to bring division between a wife and a husband, because if he can bring division between us, then he can cause this ripple effect to the third and fourth generation, right? You see it all the time. People who end up getting divorces, you can usually look at their parents. They usually have a divorce, but grandparents usually have a divorce. It's generational curse, right? And so that's where the enemy likes to attack, because if he can attack us, he can cause chaos in our kids' lives, because then, you have the mentality of, okay, I don't really have a stable father. I don't have a stable mother. So I know growing up, I had a wonderful grandfather who was able to be a dad to me, and a wonderful grandmother that got to be that mom figure. But still, even though I had that wonderful relationship, those were not my parents. They weren't my birth parents. Like they didn't have. I do have their DNA in some sense, but they're not my biological parents.
Yeah.
So I personally, for me, I just think that a lot of my issues stemmed from, really, when I look at it, and I didn't see this until the last couple of years, is that I have sought out people's approval and attention, because there is some deep-seated need from a little girl, like knowing that I'm not good enough, because the decisions that my parents have made have told me, whether they verbally said it, have told me that I am not good enough, that I was not good enough. And so now I have to work to perform, right? When somebody gives you the praise or the approval, it's like everything, right? It's like so much like meat, like you just want to take it in, like, oh, somebody thinks I'm good enough. And that feel like, and I don't know if you can relate, has caused a lot of the issues, a lot of the reasons why I was super promiscuous, because guys gave me the attention, or, so just wanted to say that.
I do.
That it's hard.
100%. That was something that caused a void with my parents, because it was very difficult for them, but I was pushing them away so much and being so independent, and I didn't need them, when really I wanted them to push through that and to still like try and get to me. But yeah, I wouldn't ask for their help in anything. I would excel in sports. I would excel in school. And they didn't really know what to do with that. They were like, well, she doesn't need, like, we don't know how to help her. She says she doesn't need us. And
that was almost a cry for them to run harder towards you, right? Like you wanted them to, I remember in the beginning of our marriage, I would like tell Seth, get away from me, or I'm leaving, and I wanted him to run after me. I wanted to feel like needed. I wanted to feel like I was worse. It's the worst thing. Like I was worse than leaving and going for me and chasing after me.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you grew up in this adopted family. What was your view of God when you were growing up? Did you, because you told me that they took you to church, that you knew about Jesus, but what was your view of God, especially coming in an adopted family? Like, were you angry that God didn't give you allow you to grow up with your regular or your biological parents, or what was your thoughts growing up about God?
So they did a really, really good job of always nurturing my thoughts on my rejection. They would make sure to always try and help me understand, like, this is who your mother was. She wasn't able to take care of you, even though she wanted to know you, even though she wanted to love you. She did not have the means, and she just was not able to take care of you. And sometimes, now looking back, I'm like, dang, I was like 5 years old trying to understand, like, there's things in life that happen because we live in a broken world, and we have to come to that understanding. But through it, like, we're not alone. So that message, God's message, Christ's message, really spoke to me at a very young age, because I was able to hold on to that, and that did bring me hope, and that did fill me.
That almost to me, it almost removes the sting of, like, it has nothing to do with you. Like, it takes the weight off of, like, you and puts it on really your mom, because that's the weight that she has to bear. Because I feel like a lot of times we bear that weight for people. So, you grow up with that rejection because you almost, like, look internally like there was something wrong with me, when really, no, your parent made the decisions they made because they're broken, right? Mm-hmm. And they're frail.
Exactly. And something that I've noticed is that I did hold on to that, and I did know, I saw truth and I knew truth, but the world kind of romanticizes your brokenness. So I remember when I went into my preteens and my teen angst, I started to cling back onto those things, like, well, I don't really know where I'm from, and maybe I'm not one. I began to cling on to the lies from the past, because it was romanticized to me in a way. And then also it made it easier in my rebellion. It made the path that I was walking make more sense. And I wanted it to make sense because I was looking for something. I was trying to fill a void.
Yeah.
And so you weren't really, like, God didn't really fill that void for you at that time in your life, right? You were more satisfied with the romanticized lifestyle.
Well, I wouldn't say that God wouldn't fill that void. I never allowed him to, because I remember when I was learning about like in 5th grade, oh, this is what, you're going to start dating soon and you're going to want to be close. You're going to want to be intimate. And I know that I never truly accepted that. I was like, no, like I would always separate, like, okay, this is church and this is God. But then over here, like I date and like I'm going to talk to guys and this is what like my first love is going to look like. And this is what all this is going to look like. And I would picture these things, dating, marriage, a career and stuff like that, void of God. I would always pursue those things without him. And I never really understood it's all together. Like the best way for all those things to come into fruition is with him. Like there's no way around him. I can't avoid it. So yeah, this has been like a very reflective experience for me, having these questions and like doing my bio with you guys, because I haven't really had a chance to dive deep and really understand like the intricacies of how he has really shaped me and worked in my life and been constantly calling for me my entire life.
Yeah, that's good. You said that just now you were talking about how there were certain things that the world kind of romanticizes, right, about a relationship. Can you pinpoint a couple of those? Like what stuck out to you when you were growing up? What did you see that you were like, man, I got to have that in my relationships? Or what types of things were you talking about there?
So one of them is, I feel like in so many movies, it's always, like the good girl, which I was the good girl. The bad guy comes around and nobody understands him. She sees his heart. And that was kind of a really big thing that I romanticized. And that's what ended up something that I was holding on to whenever I met the guy that I lost my virginity to, my high school boyfriend. Typical, no, everyone was like, why are you with this guy? Like, he treats you this way. He was verbally abusive, mentally abusive, always cutting me down. Just unhealthy back and forth, on and off kind of relationship. But I romanticized it and I gave him everything.
I found in my own life that I too romanticized things like that, and I found myself in really bad relationships that I wanted to save that person because I really deep down and subconsciously I wanted to be saved. And so if I could put my focus on this other person who had a lot of baggage, it would take away from me having to deal with my own baggage. And it's funny because Seth has been the first guy that I've dated that I feel in my mind has way less baggage than I do. And so where I've always dated guys who have a ton more baggage than me, because I could be their saving grace. I could be like that captain saving
the light. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And so coming into this marriage was really eye-opening for me because I had to sit in my own filth and I had to realize, wow, like there are a lot of broken pieces to me. And I mean, I met Seth as a Christian. And so that was even sobering to me that God's work is ongoing, right? I think it's Philippians that tells us that God will continue to work until, right? Is it Philippians? I don't know.
Yeah.
That he'll finish the work that he started within us, right?
Yeah.
Because it's ongoing. Like you don't come to the Lord, and I guess that's like one of my questions for you is that personally, I came to the Lord and felt like, oh, everything was going to be changed. I was going to be this new person. Everything was going to be good. But I found myself still dealing with a lot of things. But at this point, just not having to deal with them alone. So do you feel like you can relate in that you aren't like, you didn't arrive, you're just like on your way to arriving?
Yes, 100%. And it's the big thing and the main roadblock that he rid for me was like the sex. I basically like worship sex. Like it was a big hold on my life, and I was freed from that, thank God. And but it forced me so once I was freed from that, a lot of things didn't make sense to me anymore. Like dating didn't make sense, and boy-girl friendships didn't make a whole lot of sense to me anymore. And I realized, wow, like I need to do some studying and figure out how to navigate this, and I need to know, what do these things mean? Like, what was the design? Like they exist for a reason. How do you want us to do these things, God? How do you want us to date? How do you want us to marry? What is the meaning behind family? Like, what's the mission? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? I don't know. And I felt like I was just like figuring out life again. Like I didn't know how to do anything, and nothing really made sense. And I would look around at my friends and like movies and society, and I'd be like, well, it doesn't really look like anything's really working out super great for any of these people. So I knew there was truth that I needed to find. And I mean, it forced me to uncover. It uncovered more things in myself that I needed to work on, because I didn't have my sexual identity to hide behind anymore. So I felt like naked, for lack of a better.
Yeah, no, that's great. That is such a good analogy. Totally. Do you feel like going forward and obviously maybe eventually becoming a parent, I don't know what that looks like for you, but do you feel like it would have been helpful for your parents sound like your adoptive parents, your parents sound like amazing people and like they really loved the Lord, but do you feel like there could have been more open, real, raw conversations about sex and what that looks like in the covenant of marriage and how God really created sex to be? Like, do you wish that would have been more like talked about and really presented at a young age?
100%, 100%. And it's something that I want to continue to educate myself and study up on, because I don't give them any kind of fault. Like that's a very like, it's a very like, how do you?
Oh, girl, yeah, no. Totally.
I mean, y'all are parents, so it's like, how do you? What is the best way to go about this? And
honestly, I think it's because people don't know how to go about it. You just don't want to do it. You're just like, ugh, like you just leave it, because I know Seth can relate. Seth comes from amazing godly parents who love Jesus with all their heart. They raise their children according to the word. Of course, they're not perfect. Who is, but that was a really tough thing for you guys. You guys were never really taught, like, it wasn't an open, honest conversation in their house. Like, hey, this is sex and it's beautiful and God designed it in the covenant of marriage and this is what it looks like. Like that wasn't discussed, right?
Well, I just feel like growing up a Christian, it's kind of stereotypical that like sex is like a big no-no, like it's never talked about in church, like none of my youth pastor or that I could recall was, talked about that kind of stuff. It was viewed as this thing that you stay away from. And so like you always had like whenever the topic came up or whenever it came up on movies, you had like this nervous feeling within you, so that it was awkward, like, and
and taboo. And we know that like things that as humans, okay, when somebody says not to do something, even now, I'm an adult, and if someone says don't do that, I have a curiosity of why I can't do it. And I think that's why kids start viewing pornography at such a young age. They start getting wrapped up in weird encounters with other children because they're curious. Like they want to know. You're telling me, no, let's not talk about this. You don't do it. You wait till marriage. Well, why?
Well, and I think we're talking about how Satan plants these things in our life at a young age and draws us towards this sexual mentality. And I think it's part of his plan to make it so awkward that like the first time your kids hear about sex is at school with their friends, or Satan tries to drive a wedge in your marriage so much that you don't want to even talk about it with your kids. And I think one of the things that we've agreed to is we want that to be an open conversation in our house, so that when Jake and when our kids the first time that they hear about sex is not at school.
Yeah,
It's not with their friends. It's with us who can give them a godly picture of what sex is supposed to look like, so that they understand that it's beautiful, that it's from God, that God created sex not to be what relationships are based on, but in addition to a relationship, to build intimacy, to bring physical, emotional, spiritual intimacy in your relationship. And we want our kids to understand that, and we want people out there to understand that like your relationship is not built around sex. Sex within the confines of marriage, in our opinion,
it's an overpouring.
yes, yeah, exactly. It should be something so beautiful and so mutually accepted between you and your spouse that it brings you two together. It creates more union.
Yeah.
It's not the foundation of your marriage. Jesus should be the foundation of your marriage, and you should be glorifying Jesus even in sex. And that's And so we pray, when we're intimate and stuff like that. And so because we want to remind ourselves that sex is beautiful, that it's something to glorify God with. So, but I don't think our society teaches us that, right? They think sex is the foundation of a marriage. You look at sex is the foundation of any relationship, whether it be between a man and a woman, or between a man and a man, or a female and a female, right? It's all about sex. It's all about how can I be most pleased in this relationship sexually. And that's why there's so much divorce. I think that's why there's so much issue and relationship problems.
Because the relationship becomes about me, not about us.
Yeah, because sex is, if you're not praying about it, if you're not being submissive to your spouse, both of the man and the wife, then it becomes a very selfish act. Like, what can you do to please me, instead of how can I please you?
Yeah.
How can we have a sexual relationship that pleases each other and builds each other up? But we don't see that in society. We don't see that in the movies. We don't see that on TV, right? It's all about self. And so what I wanted to ask you was, what are some tools, or what is Satan? How is he affecting our society to make sex so appealing that it becomes the foundation of the relationship rather than Jesus?
So I would say just the way that sex has become so normalized. Sex is super normalized. Friends hook up. Everybody, or people encourage you to masturbate and to pleasure yourself, and you can drive. I mean, I live in Dallas, so there's condom stores everywhere. There's sex shops everywhere, and it's just, I didn't realize how normalized it was and how scary that normalization is, until like the past 8 months, until like the sanctification that I've been going through and the things that I no longer want to be exposed to anymore. So yeah, and then even I feel like people are desensitized to pornography. I went to go watch a movie the other day. It was with Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway. It just came out. I forget what it was called, but they have a scene in it where they're intimate together. And it was basically like showing everything. And I was like, what? And I was like, I'm going to look away. And the guy that I was watching the movie with, he was like, it's not like you don't know, like, it's not like you don't know what that is. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that like I still want to like sit here and like expose myself to it. Like, I'm going to look away. Like, so
isn't it crazy you're talking about the sanctification process, and how like I used to watch movies like that all the time, and it wouldn't even like
phase.
I wouldn't even realize it was happening. But then when I came back to the Lord, I was so super, super sensitive. Like, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like, whoa, fast forward. Like
Yeah.
you pick up on
Yeah.
it really fast. And, you know, I just want to encourage you because I was really just convicted right now when you said that, because I have found myself in a very weird season of my Christianity the last year. And I have become a little more desensitized to that conviction. And so I just want to encourage you to really hold on to that and to not lose that, because as you move on in your walk with the Lord, which is always a valley or a season of valleys and mountaintops, it's just, you know, that's just life. But really hold on to that conviction, because it's a beautiful thing, and I want that back. So I just want you to let you know that that's an encouragement to me.
Okay, I'm just going to dive into another question here that I had for you. And it's kind of going along, that was a good segue talking about like conviction in the church, because I feel like the normalization of sexuality has entered the church. And so do you see sexual identity being a problem in the Christian church today?
So I actually, the first time, that question makes me think of the first time I ever saw a man and a man kissing was when I was 14 years old at my youth, like I was at youth night at the church that I was going to. And so that being said, that's honestly like the only real thing that that it brings to my mind, but it's also something very difficult that I'm not quite sure how to tackle, because you do want to continue for the church to be very open to everybody, all the broken people, and your brokenness manifests in different ways. So for some people, you know, it's the way that they dress or the sexual preference that they have, or so it's like something that all we can do is just navigate prayerfully, because I want to keep praying for you. Like it's extremely difficult to really navigate without harboring like rejection or animosity between people, like feeling not accepted by the church or
I used to really, when I first came to the Lord, I got super like hypercritical of that being allowed in church. I would be like, oh my gosh, like those people are lesbians or they're gay and they're here in church. Like I never voiced that, but if I could be honest, it was like like hypocrisy in my heart. And I will say that my own personal journey now, I have really shied away from that, and I have really opened my heart to see that we all, like you said, deal with sin in different ways. And those people need to be in church. Like I probably need to be in church more than they do. You know, like when you really examine yourself and you can really see where your heart is, you start realizing that those two people in church, thank God that they're there. So.
And I guess I meant more of that question because I do think the church should not like uninvite people who have different sexual preferences. I think that is the place they should be, right? Because we're all broken. Just because you struggle with, homosexuality or you're attracted to the same sex doesn't mean that you shouldn't go to church, right? Because, it's, with all the pornography out there, that's a temptation for every guy that exists, So it's not that, my question wasn't, I guess, really geared towards that, but more of like, do you see women or men claiming to be Christians or who have been Christians for years struggling with sexual identity, struggling with some of these things that we're discussing because of the influence that that society has on their life?
100%, and I would give most of that to the influence of social media. It's so powerful. We're all on it. It's like, what is it even? It's a platform for us to display ourselves. But that's so confusing and contradicting to who we are as beings, because where we find the most fulfillment is putting God on a platform, not ourselves.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's just, there's nothing to be found there, and like we keep missing the mark. Like oh, I'm gonna make this platform for myself. What do I need to look like? I need to be sexy. or I need to look like I have a lot of money, or I need to look like I'm always in a different place traveling,
Right.
or I need to look like I'm super knowledgeable. Just so, yeah, I give a lot of that. I credit it to social media, even though obviously these things existed, like the finding our identity elsewhere existed 20 plus years ago before social media was even so big. But
I would agree with you too, on that. Like, just to go even a little bit deeper, I feel like that is why people in church are dealing with the things that they're dealing with, because they feel like they have to put on this facade. Like they feel like they have to be this person. Seth and I in the last couple of years have just really been disheartened by what we see in leadership at a lot of churches, with pastors having affairs and pastors being stuck in like pornography and leaders, beating their wives, and it's just all this stuff that you think like from the outside, you're like, oh my gosh, how could they do that? But I think what's happening is we're not talking about these real issues in church, and we're all just walking around like, praise the Lord, God is so good today, I'm free. Well, poor Susan is getting beat at home by the deacon, and it's like we're not talking about these real issues and saying, hey, this is who I am. I'm broken and I need help right now. Like I'm stuck in the midst of this sin. And people don't want to be like that because they're scared they're going to be judged. They're scared that they're going to be annihilated by, someone's judgment or, I guess, excommunicated from the church if they really talk about the temptations and what they're dealing with. And so I feel like that is why we're dealing with such a sexualized culture, even within the church, is because we're not talking about it. We're not being honest about it. We're not bringing it to the altar and saying, hey, I need help in this area, because people are scared. They're scared.
Well, it just goes back to the fact that social media, right, is a platform where you display your best, right? So it takes away from the authenticity that we experience in life. And that's why, like, I wanted this to be a platform for people to share that, because no one's going to relate to fake. Like, you could talk about Jesus and how your life is so good all day, but if you're not real, that's not something people are going to be able to relate to and be challenged by. And so I think social media does take away from that authenticity, and it creates a false, like, fake environment. So, and my last question for you, Kristen, is how has it been dealing with your friends that you had in your BC days? I mean, has it been a tough transition? Have you had to remove any friends from your life because of this new identity that you're finding in Jesus? What do your friends think of you now? I mean, has it been emotionally challenging because of them maybe befriending you or anything like that?
So I've only had one kind of fallout with a male friend of mine who is very like not. He had a bad experience with Christians, as a lot of people have. So he immediately, the moment that I started going back to church and I was on this journey, there was like this tension in our friendship, and he kind of just told me I'm not the same anymore. And I'm like, I don't know what I want you to, like, I don't know what you want me to say. Like, this is just what I believe. I don't understand why that has to make you like me any less. Like, I'm your friend still. I'm still here for you. I probably care about you more now than I did before, because I'm pursuing not living for myself anymore and my selfishness. So, that was just the one. But with all my other friendships, I don't really get to spend as much time with people anymore, because I'm very concerned about where am I, what am I doing, what am I feeding myself, why am I here, like I'm just so much more intentional with my time and my conversations and the things that I listen to and the places that I go. Because I have a purpose now. So
that's like beautiful, Kristen, and you need to give yourself that. You need to allow yourself to go through a season where you really get rooted and planted in the Lord, because there'll come another season where you are okay doing certain things or going certain places because you're so grounded in the Lord that you can do that. So I feel like in the beginning, when you first come to God, you really have to set those boundaries. You have to get rooted and grounded and like really poured into from the Lord, because then you can go to like dinner with those friends, or different situations where you're a little bit stronger now and you're not weighed into temptation, or where you're more mature, right? So it's just like when you plant a plant, like that first winter, that plant can either make it or they'll die, right? But as they get even older, those winters aren't so bad because they're grounded and they're rooted. So that's you take a season, and if people don't understand that you just pray that God really shows them that it has nothing to do with the religion. It has nothing to do with rejection of you think you're better than them. It's your own personal self-development.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Yeah. So I think that'll be a good place to end our conversation is encouragement, and that we're all being grown, we're all becoming more sanctified every day. There's things in our lives that we have to get rid of, right? There's fleshly desires, there's hobbies that we have that are not godly. And so we just want to challenge you, all three of us, if you're listening to this, that Jesus is the way, and he'll show you those things in your life that you need to submit to him, whether it's your sexuality, whether it's a bad hobby, whether it's maybe you're struggling with pornography or something like that you need to submit to Jesus. Please just give it to him, and he'll do it. So with that, we'll say goodbye. Thanks for coming on, Kristen.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Being here and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much. And I hope that I was able to give some good stuff to you guys through my testimony. This has been a very growing experience, and it makes me just like want to go write every day. Like, okay, how is God?
Yeah.
How has he worked in my life? So thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll see you guys later.